Good evening. Welcome to the Pittsford Board of Education meeting. If you could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Second.
Thanks, Pete. And Ted, any edits? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. May I have an approval of the minutes from August 10th, please? Seems like forever ago. Thanks, Sarah.
Second.
Renee, any edits? No? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Board of Education reports. We are off to a great start. We have many meetings arranged. You can see the dates here that are scheduled. Just make sure that you pay attention to the venue because we had some dates that did not work with the DoubleTree, so our venue may be changing. So if you just make sure that you, Deb, I think you've reflected that in the board calendar. Thank you for that. We did have a legislative committee meeting last week where Robin and Sarah attended, and I was there as well. So I'd like Robin to report out what we heard.
Yes.
Robin, if you get your microphone.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. The Legislative Committee of MIXPA met on Wednesday, September 8th, and these are highlights to our legislative update. At the state level, all are aware of Governor Hochul's mask mandate released on September 2nd. We are seeking clarity on the regular testing of unvaccinated staff, and our superintendents will be working with Dr. Mendoza and his team to develop the logistics and protocols. Other updates. We recently found out that most Albany staffers and our legislators do not plan to be back in their offices until session begins in January. Therefore, the usual December one-day trip that's usually scheduled is impacted, resulting in our committee not going to Albany in December, but a plan for a virtual format, depending on the need to advocate pre-budget. On the federal level, our MIXPA Executive Director Sherry Johnson reached out to Education Secretary Cardona, who replied with his pledge to, quote, work tirelessly to make sure our education system is a door to opportunity, a great equalizer for every American, unquote. Finally, Senator Gillibrand has co-sponsored a bill called the Universal School Meals Act that would provide free breakfast, lunch, dinner, and a snack to all school children regardless of income. The bill is currently in the Agriculture Committee, and we will continue to track the progress of this bill. The bus driver shortage resulted in ideas about advocating that we look for a different credentialed CDL license. Another idea was that we put more funding towards schools earmarked for drivers. That ends my report. Thank you.
Thanks, Robin. Sarah, do you have anything to add?
I think that was a great report, Robin. Definitely covered everything. Again, all that I would really add is that related to the bus drivers, I thought it was really interesting. We were talking about the CDL licensing, and of course we don't want to change anything that would impact safety of our students with regards to the criteria of that licensing, but maybe reformatting that if that's possible, working with New York State to change some of that criteria. It sounds like, as we all probably already know, that we're losing drivers to trucking companies because they can offer more competitive rates and everything that goes along with that. So if there was a way to differentiate between school bus driver CDL licensing and trucking CDL, that would be helpful to us and everyone across the state. So I'm sure we'll hear more about that in the coming meetings and trying to come up with a plan to work as a whole state to fix that problem. So, yes.
Yes.
I would just add in Darren's report, he's also going to share some of the impacts that the driver shortage has had on Pittsford as well.
Yeah, it was a common theme across most boards that were there, so thanks for sharing out. I think you did an excellent job summarizing what happened at the legislative meeting. There's a lot on our plates, a lot of advocacy to be made, so looking forward to that. Other meeting reports, we do have a fiscal training coming up, Sarah and Jeff. I think you're aware of that, coming up in October, and if you could just let Deb know if you're planning to attend that. It's on the 16th of October. And dates to remember, we are closed on the 16th of September. We are also having a board tour on the 23rd of September. No visit, but we are going to be touring at 7:15 a.m. If I could just have a show of hands of those of you that plan to be attending that. Excellent. Okay.
Remind everyone, no breakfast.
No breakfast, right. It's just a visit at the school similar to last year. The 23rd of September, there's a Monroe County School Board Association Fall Law Conference that anyone is welcome to attend. If you're interested in attending, you can let Deb know. She'll RSVP on your behalf. Typically, the law conference, just for you, those of you who have not attended, it's about 8 until noonish. And it should be a great conference again this fall. And then the 5th of October is our next board meeting. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Darren Kinney for the financial report. Darren.
Thank you. All I have tonight, as far as the report's concerned, is what I'll call the auction of beyond useful life equipment. We have 6 buildings and grounds vehicles, including a snow blower and a tractor. And we're trying this year 2 buses going through the Teetsworth auction. It's been very successful for the other products, and we want to see if we can get better revenue out of those items than we do through trade and allowance.
Okay, may I have a motion?
So moved.
Thanks, Renee. Any questions for Darren? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
Okay. You want me to? Okay. So from an informational standpoint, I put some information together regarding where we stand with transportation, because it seems like you can't be on the news or watch the news without seeing something. But we continue to transport a little over 6,000 students daily to 54 different locations. As of about 4:30 today, that's up to 57. And approximately 500 routes covering 7,000 miles daily. So that's kind of our task before us.
Darren, can I just
Yeah.
ask a clarifying question? So we're sending students to 57 different locations, minus the 9
Correct.
in Pittsford.
Correct.
All right. So I think that's an important thing to let settle in for people, is that we're sending students to 46, 47, 48 different places outside of Pittsford schools.
Correct.
Thank you.
Some of which out of the county even. So to give some perspective, if this was, say, 3 years ago or 4 years ago and we were fully staffed, we would have about 106 to 108 bus drivers. We finished the June 30, 2021 school year. We had 15 vacancies plus 13 people out on medical leave, so we were 28 drivers short. That's what we knew we were dealing with. We spent the summer doing things to try to target recruiting, retention of staff, and reducing absenteeism, as well as consolidating routes. And one of the key areas, as you know, and we've talked before, is going through the board policy and making sure we build routes according to that policy. So we were able to consolidate down to 93 routes. However, we only had 78 drivers, if you had talked to us about a week before school started. Some of the measures we put into place did attract some new drivers, but we did have some retirements, and anyway, a few people rescinded their retirement, and some people resigned. The hard part is we're 15 drivers short right now, and we average, looking at the data, 8 to 10 drivers absent per day throughout the school year. So that means if we have everybody, all the mechanics and all the people in the office drive as well that are certified, and they all are certified right now, we still wouldn't have enough to cover that. So the good news is, compared to a lot of schools that I'm talking to, we're actually in pretty good shape, but it's not in great shape to be in. I've been doing this for 30 years, and that's the worst it's ever been. Today, for example, in the morning, we had 3 people in the office / mechanics driving, and this afternoon, 6. So that kind of gives you a real quick thumbnail of where we stand.
And Darren, I would also say that in my inbox today, I received several emails from districts that were canceling after-school activities outside of Pittsford because they didn't have drivers to take the kids home today after the normal end of the school day.
I received an article this afternoon that in the Boston area, they're using the National Guard to transport students because they're so short.
So if anyone in the audience is interested, if you really want to make a difference, we do have applications right here, and I'm not kidding.
I'll bring a bus over and we'll do a road test tonight.
Thanks, Darren. Human Resource Report, Sean.
Good evening. For your consideration, we have first the professional staff report. We have a number of new hires, elementary and secondary full and part-time teachers, school psychologists, social worker, student services teacher, as well as school-related professionals, including educational assistants, CSC assigned paras, school nurse. We also have termination due to a position ending. We have an SRP resignation for retirement, and that's Mary Kay Kreinberg with 10.2 years of service at Thornell Road, so we thank her for that. We have 2 teacher resignations, SRP resignations, and finally, we have our coaching salaries for fall athletics, as well as athletic volunteer approvals for you.
That's a lot.
We've been busy.
You have been very busy, yes. May I have a motion, please? Thanks, Jeff and Robin. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed?
And I'm going to abstain because of the risk of a potential perceived conflict.
Okay. Thanks, Pete. You have that, Deb? Okay. Okay, motion is carried.
Okay, thank you. Next for your consideration is our support staff report. We have school aide and clerical appointments, 3 clerical resignations. We have a clerical retirement for one of our department members, Usha Jagadish, who is in our HR office with 22.6 years of service, so we thank her for that. We have just bus driver appointments, bus driver resignations. We have custodial appointments, security guard resignation, maintenance retirement for Robert Ewert with 38.4 years of service, so we thank him for that. And we have 2 food service worker appointments and 1 resignation.
Okay, may I have a motion, please? Thank you, Renee and Sarah. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sean. Curriculum report, Melanie.
Good evening. This is just kind of the time of year I bring you the overview of the curriculum projects that were approved for the 21-22 school year in this case. As you know, the bulk of the work that gets approved actually takes place then immediately in the summer. So a lot of work took place this past summer relative to curriculum and assessment writing projects. I've given you a few of the highlights, certainly around our K-5 social studies work that we spent a lot of time on this summer. 7th, 8th, and 11th grade U.S. history curriculum work. Both of those were part of the focus of the curriculum forums a couple weeks ago. We're continuing to work to revise our middle school science curriculum to adjust to the new state science standards. We have common assessments that were cleaned up, created, or refined. K-8 math, so that covered both our elementary standards leader and our secondary standards leader for math. We're working on that. And we're continuing to do the work to fill out the curriculum for our new full year English 12 courses. I've also provided you with some, again, high-level overview of the instructional road mapping work that was done this summer again. This is technically not curriculum writing, but it's so closely connected, and I'm so proud of the work that our teachers have done in this area that I want to take the opportunity to brag on them a little bit. And I think this is one of the biggest silver linings of COVID for us, because the instructional roadmap work that was begun last summer, carried over into this summer, has really provided our teachers with an opportunity to come to consensus around the most essential learning for each of the courses that they teach, and develop roadmaps that pace out that essential learning, giving them permission to let go of some of the things that are nice to know but not necessary in order to make room for attending to some of the social emotional learning needs in their classroom, to go back and do some reteaching, filling up gaps, extending kids where they need extensions on some of that essential learning. So teachers came together, 49 secondary courses were mapped this summer, revising from maps that were created last summer, or in some cases creating new. The elementary level, we took a slightly different turn with this year, and we developed what we call guides to the essentials. These are built around the 3 marking periods. They are anchored to the report card indicators, and again, they highlight the most significant learning for each of the units. We leave some autonomy at the building level for building level teams to decide some of the organization and pacing of some of those units, but all teachers work off of that. And the guides that we developed this summer, we built with significant teacher input, and then at teacher request, we built hyperlinks into those guides. So teachers using those guides can very quickly get to the curriculum unit, the common assessments, resources, report card indicators, et cetera. So we feel like we're building some really important tools that will provide for consistency and alignment of essential curriculum K-12. So that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Melanie. Special education report, Elizabeth.
Good evening. The Special Education District Plan, CSE recommendations, and CPSE recommendations are all on the consent agenda.
Then we need to have a board action on.
Yeah, we didn't move the other one off the agenda, so let's go ahead and do the special ed district plan.
Okay, so the Special Education District Plan came for a first reading at the last board meeting and is here for a second reading, and I request your consideration to approve that plan, which will be in place for the next 2 years.
May I have a motion, please? Thanks, Ted. Thanks, Robin. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thanks, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
Superintendent's report, Mike.
Good evening. This evening we will need a call for an executive session to discuss the employment of 2 individuals.
Okay, may I have a motion, please? Thanks, Pete. Sarah? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
Also, you have the first reading of a change in policy around probation and tenure, if there are any questions. Okay, it'll go up next time for approval. And then I have a couple updates that I'd like to do at the screen. Good evening, everyone. We're here. We did it. We did part of it. We're here 5 days a week, which is exciting. For opening day, many of us, the president and vice president, Melanie, and other central office team members went and visited all of the schools, walked through probably 50 different classrooms, talked to students, talked to staff, and have kept that up for the last 3 days. And by all accounts, our students are doing great, and our staff are doing great, and our families seem to be doing great, knowing that our kids are back in school full time. This weekend I went to both the football and the soccer game. To see fans unlimited in the fields was amazing. To see kids that were excited, have school spirit back was terrific. It's that feeling that we're starting to get there. So regardless of where we are now, I think it's important to understand the growth and the progress that we've made from where we were last year. We're certainly headed in the right direction, and it's a really super good feeling. So the slide I have in front of you is really what happened between our last board meeting and this board meeting, which obviously is something that is controversial. And in red, I highlighted Governor Hochul saying that I'm immediately directing the Department of Health to institute universal masking for anyone entering our schools. And we are launching a back-to-school COVID testing program to make testing for students and staff widely available and convenient. The sentence above, as it starts, says that the state has ordered all students, staff, and visitors inside school buildings to wear masks, a mandate that will not just apply to public school districts, but also to private, charter, and religious schools throughout the school. So if you think about where we were last time and where we are here, where we are now, last time we were talking about metrics to when we can take masks off. Or make masks optional, and now we're talking about a mandate for masks. And I think that's going to be that give and take that we're playing with for a little bit. This is public health law, so this isn't a rule that falls upon the board to say take the masks off our students. It's not a law that the superintendent can undo. It's something that we're contending with right now, but it's also balanced with knowing that our students are back. It's also balanced with the fact that we are outside, unmasked, having fun, cheering each other on with school spirit. It's also balanced with all of our clubs back together, all of our kids in person. Everything that happens in school normally is happening in school right now, but for now we are contending with the masks. I would also say that I get that the masking part is tough for many, and it certainly is causing a level of vitriol on school boards and superintendents. I would encourage you to keep your voice up and be heard if it's something you disagree with, but know that this is not something that the Board of Education, it's not something the superintendent did. It's a public law that we have to follow. So having said that, our primary jobs right now is to make sure that while our kids are in school, that they're having the best possible experience. So given that, I will share two hiccups that we've had so far, I think. One has been around lunches. The second one has been around free periods at the high school. So just to give you a little background, lunches used to be, so I was a middle school principal, and the cafeteria was it's a free-for-all. So it's something you just have to see to experience. I think that's why we don't invite middle school parents to the cafeteria. But probably the most concerning part of lunches is that we're unmasked and we can't be 6 feet apart. And because we can't be 6 feet apart and we can't be masked and we are eating, that we're doing our best to try to walk that fine line between allowing kids to eat and socialize, but getting their masks on within a 15-minute period. And the reason that 15-minute period is so important is part of the stuff that's out of our control. So we can control our practices and protocols within school, but when it comes to health protocols from the county, that's outside our domain. So if you are a close contact or decided to be or designated a close contact for someone that was COVID positive, and you had your mask off for more than 15 minutes, then we can't say whether or not you're quarantined. The Monroe County Health will then call you and say you're quarantined. So we have no control over that. Our goal right now, one of our many goals, is to keep students in school. And one of the ways to keep students in school is to make sure that they're masked for that minimum amount of time, so that they're not pulled out for quarantine like we've seen in many, there's so many examples. So we want to prevent that. We're trying to take a pragmatic approach to dealing with the governor's ruling and public health law with the practicality of students in school and eating lunches. So we've had some snafus. We are cleaning them up, as this is day 4, I believe, of school so far. And I would encourage people, if they have concern about anything that's happening, you do not have to. You're certainly welcome to go to Facebook or social media. But I would say if you're genuinely concerned about how your child is feeling, go to the building principal. Just pick up the phone and call. Say, here's how my child is feeling. Here's what they're reporting. And let us work with you. If we can work with you, we will 100% work with you, and we'll get to a positive resolve. So I would encourage that approach if possible. The second part, I think there's a little snafu, is that we've had free periods for 11th and 12th graders at the high school, which means that if you had a study hall or not a class assigned, that you basically can go anywhere within the school. And we decided this year, for the sake of contact tracing right now, to start things tight and have students attend study hall so we can record where they are at that point, and then loosen up as the year goes on. And when I say as the year goes on, we're already making plans now to help facilitate students getting back their free periods for 11th and 12th grade. And looking at the county numbers, again, based on whether or not you believe in them or not, they are what they are. We perceive them as we perceive them, and they are certainly seem to be plateauing and possibly going down, which means that we're in a position now after day 4 to consider bringing back those free periods for 11th and 12th graders. So the governor also shared here that she was going to work to require vaccinations for all school personnel with an option to test out weekly. And so I just want to share what that part of that law is going to look like. So the New York State Department of Health ruling 2B, this is for students, requires school districts to offer weekly testing to non-vaccinated students. So instead of limiting it to non-vaccinated students, on tomorrow, families are going to receive an email from me letting them know that on Friday to look for an email from Qualtrics, which is the health screening software company that we used last year. And it's going to ask you for consent or non-consent for testing, for regardless if you're vaccinated or non-vaccinated. And I think this is an important point because people are all over the spectrum with regards to their perspective of testing. There are people that are fully vaccinated that want to be tested. There's people that don't believe in vaccinations. There's people that don't believe in testing. There's people that don't believe in both or one or the other. And so we're trying to be inclusive in this approach. So we're going to offer consent to everyone. And then we will take that consent that will be housed in a 2D law compliant software where we will then have consent from the families that would agree to be tested randomly. And then we will randomly select 5 to 10% of students each week and staff each week to be tested. And that will give us a really good pool across the district of how we're doing relative to COVID. So this seems to be a win-win, where if you don't want to be involved in that, you don't have to be. If you want to be involved, you can be. On Wednesday, which is tomorrow, I'll send out an email notifying parents to look for their email on Friday. On Friday, you'll receive an email from Qualtrics asking for your consent or non-consent, and that window will stay open through the end of the month. And then we will begin the random testing on October 4th, and you will be notified in advance if your child is selected to be tested. So the second part of that is related to staff, and this is related to the law, which says all staff have to be tested weekly unless they show a proof of vaccination. So the way the law is written is that this is not a vaccination policy, it's a testing policy. So similarly for staff, we have used Qualtrics as a secure location to house proof of vaccination should they choose to show that. Should they not choose to show that, then we will offer testing in-house, which means that one option would be to go to your school nurse. We'll have multiple days, multiple times available for convenience sake for staff to come in. Should staff decide that they're not comfortable getting tested internally, then they're going to have to go externally, which means that would be on their own. Cost, their own time, etc. That will be due, all of that data will be due October 1st, similar to the students, which means October 4th, that week, we will begin testing 5 to 10% of our students weekly, and then whatever staff in addition that we need to, including staff that want to be tested, just to be tested. That includes coaches as well, substitute teachers as well, and certain contractors that we work with. So we're going to be really putting a lot on our nurses and other people to get this done. So I'm going to pause there for a second and just see if there's any questions from the board regarding the opening, around testing, around vaccines, around any of the positives or glitches or anything else that you may want to ask.
Mike, just curious, who's paying for the tests?
So today I picked up 2,000 tests from the county. And then next, I think in 2 weeks, I pick up another 5,000 tests. And so you're probably right. I think it's the CARES Act is my guess of some federal funding that is paying for that. Any other questions or comments before I move on?
Really quick. Thank you, Pete. Really quick, what are your thoughts about the possibility of making vaccines mandated for all faculty and staff? Do you think that's something, have you heard anything about that? Is it something being talked about?
Yes, there's always that conversation. I think there's always facets of legislators that are talking about that. I don't want to give a personal perspective of this, but I would say that as a CEO of a district, I think that the plan that we have right now meets both worlds, and it seems to be, again, very pragmatic and allows us to have a win-win, both on a health and on a freedom perspective.
One more question. Is all of this, the scenario, based on the infection rate, or is it based on something in our county, or is this a statewide regardless of numbers?
Yeah, good question, Sarah. So this is all state-driven. As of right now, Monroe County Department of Health has nothing to do with this except enforcement. And so this is coming from the governor's office. Any other questions? Can I just say it's actually awful to start a year to talk about this, because there's so much good going on in the district. I mean, there's 10 billion things that are going great, but this is our reality right now. This is what we're going to push through, and we're going to do it, again, with as much empathy and sense of compassion as we can. Todd?
One quick question. Have you been given any indication on what will be done with the data and what the impact could be from the data that's collected from the testing?
So that's a loaded question. So the data, my guess is that the data is going to drive the county numbers down, is my guess. So last year we tested several thousand people within our schools, and we had, I believe, 1 positive, 0 to 1. And with all the districts doing that, I believe it's going to drive the positivity number down, which can help with maybe potential perspective and policy change. That's one thing. The second thing, my biggest worry with this is that you have people that are non-compliant and they don't want to test, and they don't want to show their proof of vaccination, and they resign. And that's our unfortunate reality. And you heard Darren report his about bus drivers. My biggest worry, the biggest thing that will shut down our schools, is if we can't transport kids. And we are so. You've heard on the news that this is a RCSD issue. It's not. This is a suburban issue, and for us, we're walking a real fine line. Which is why, going back to the lunches and the masking on the buses, our bus drivers typically are older. They're more susceptible, and we need to make sure that there's assurances where they feel comfortable, so that we can run school. So my hope is that an unintended consequence would be that we lose more people for noncompliance, which we are working really hard with people to help them with any questions that they have or any assistance along the way. Other questions? Okay, here we go. So this is really cool. Today at Mendon Center Elementary School, these are our students and staff out on the field, and we had a drone fly by and take this picture. Their theme for the year is BU. I thought that would be apropos for talking about equity and inclusivity. Here's what it looks like from afar. Students and staff are there. Before we redistrict, it would probably have said be yours. But we luckily were able to move students out, and that's what allowed us to actually keep students in last year, which is a positive. So this summer, on July 14th and 15th, we had 82 participants, including all of our Board of Education members, our district planning team, our ILC, our IAC, our PDLT, which also included parent and community voice within and among the committees, come together and talk about our goals for this year as it relates to inclusivity and equity. Our goals for our time together over the last 2 years was to anchor our work in shared understanding and definitions, to review and synthesize our own Pittsford data. So we didn't go outside of Pittsford. We looked at our own data. A big part of our time together was to figure out internally and use a little brain sweat as to why this work is so critical for us. So in other words, why is a focus on equity and inclusion important? We also looked at New York State Education Department's framework to see to what extent we were aligned to that. We unpacked our equity policy, which is a whole process into itself. And then we asked not only the members there, but back at school for a commitment to personal actions to support our growth towards equity. So some of the terms we reviewed were around diversity, all the ways we differ, anything that makes us unique as part of this definition of diversity, including our difference in thought. So as I look in this room right now, one of the things that I know for sure is that there's diversity in thought. And that's important because we're all together in an ecosystem and we have to learn how to live together with that diversity of thought. We talked about inclusion and inclusivity. I'm going to skip down. Inclusivity is taking diversity and inclusion and turning it into action by creating a school environment of engagement, respect, and connection where ideas, backgrounds, and perspectives are tied together in a caring environment. That caring environment part is a theme that's going to run through everything that I share. That's me as a superintendent saying that the number one thing that I want in our schools is a caring environment. As a dad, I want my students to be, my children to be in a caring environment. I would think that as parents, you would want your children to be in a caring environment. That's something that we can just say that we're doing or take it for granted, but you need a sense of intentionality for that to really happen. And so we are formulating a plan to intentionally make sure our students are in a caring environment. So there's a lot of outside controversy around this topic, however you want to frame it. And I keep referencing this wheel to staff and the family's community, to our board, and to others. That wheel that you see are the kids that walk through our door. They're the families that come to us. This is Pittsford. So in Pittsford Central School District, we have students of different genders, different races, different ages, different religions. We have a wide range of socioeconomics, et cetera, et cetera. And our job, and I'm steadfast with this, every single person on that wheel, regardless of where they land or the multiple places that they land, need to feel like this is a place where they can come, where they're comfortable, where they know that they're cared for, and us as a community need to support that. It's a non-negotiable. This is something that we have to do to make sure our kids feel supported in our schools. I'm going to give you a quick example. Darren talked about buses today, and you see the fence around equality and equity. Equality meaning everyone's equal, right? So you see some people not even be able to look over the fence because they're all standing on the same box. And then you see the next one where equity means you're helping those that need a little extra help. And then there's actually a third slide, if you wanted to see it, which had no fence there. Our urban-suburban students, for example, need support from us right now. Our Rochester City School District is not able, we're finding out daily different pieces of information, able to support our urban-suburban students in getting to school in a timely manner. They're not able to take our students back for after-school activities. So that's an example of that fence right there. Our urban-suburban students don't need that fence. They're already getting up at 4 in the morning. They're making a commitment to get up at 4 a.m., to get on a bus, to possibly get on another bus, to get here on time for after an hour and change of a ride to get here for school. So when I think about equity, I think about what it means to support all of our students. And right now, because of where they live, or where they were born, or where the family they live in, they can't have the experiences our students have right now. As of today, our urban-suburban students, we can't find a way right now for them to participate in music, art, some athletics after school because there's no ride for them back home. The RTS stops now are limited to Sutherland High School. And they, instead of going every 15 minutes, they are now going every half hour to hour. And then think about what that's like in the winter. So when I talk about equity, I'm talking about helping students so they can be on the same playing field. I'm talking about our students with special education needs, that we need to provide additional support so they can be successful. I'm talking about our students of color, so that they can have a place in school where we can allow them to be their own person, so that they can live a life in Pittsford like everyone else does, without having to change who they are. And many other things aligned to all of that. We have a sense of intentionality to make kids feel like they belong here. Every student needs to feel our love. Everyone, regardless of who they are, where they come from. And that's what our job is. So as we worked together this summer, we looked at a lot of different things in our district. We looked at the documents from our mission, our vision, our values, our success statements. We internalized all of those, and to say, are we living these? And after we went through that, we started to look at our own data. So I'm going to share with you just some of the things that we shared. This is a snapshot. I mean, we have reams of data, right? So when you talk about making data-informed decisions, so take emotion out of this. Take your philosophy out of it and just look at hardcore data. The percent of black students enrolled in any honors level English course is on average 12.4% lower. Honors math classes, 17.3% lower. On the New York State fourth grade math assessment, white students have an average passing rate of 76%. Black students have an average of 50%. So we know that race doesn't have an indication on how well you do. So it begs the question, why is this happening? So as a district, we need to start asking ourselves, why are these things happening? And what can we do from an equity perspective to make sure they're not repeating themselves? And it goes on. Low-income students are 30% likely to graduate with a Regents diploma with advanced distinction than non-low-income peers. That's in Pittsford. So how can we assist our low-income students to do better? What is it that our low-income students need to thrive? And it goes on. So if we go back to this wheel, what does the data say about this wheel? How can we help our students from an equity perspective so that all kids are feeling that same level of success? And then we talked about our why. So why is this work important? So to give this perspective, this was primarily work that took place over the 2 days that we were together. And it was a document that was ever changing. It was growing. We had 10 tables of about 8 each. And we just looked at our data, we looked at our belief statements, we looked at our equity policy, we looked internally, and we said, why is this work around equity and inclusion important? And I'll just share with you what came from each of the tables. Our why is that we want to empower our students to be their authentic selves, exercise their voice, connect across lines of difference, and access their potential. I don't know who can argue with that. Equity and inclusion are essential in our schools because our students are complex individuals bringing unique experiences. We have the responsibility to provide the opportunity for all students to succeed and thrive in school no matter who they are, where they live, or where they come from. We recognize that we must be intentional in this journey. Our district is an ecosystem, with every individual a piece of a bigger picture. Each piece is critical in of itself and critically connected to countless others. For our students to do and be their best, we need to ensure they feel represented, respected, cared for, an important part of our overall system. In alignment with our mission, vision, core values, we acknowledge our school community is diverse, and these differences should be recognized and valued so that our students can positively influence the world and our district can realize the promise of public education. I'll let you read these. There's a theme here that talks about students being different. 6,000 students coming from different families, different values, different beliefs, different upbringing. And while every one of us has our own opinion, the one opinion that's non-negotiable is that we have to support every one of our students in a way that they're going to feel that they belong in Pittsford. That's the intentionality I'm talking about. So from this 2-day conference, we also moved into then a second day, the second day primarily focusing on what are the things that we can do as a district that are aligned with our equity policy that will assist us with this work. In order to do that, we looked at the role of New York State Education Department and their framework on diversity and equity and inclusion. We looked at our own policy, and we looked at the level of alignment between what's in our plan and what's in New York State Education's plan. And these are the areas that are truly aligned, even though our policy came out before the framework did. And so looking at these categories, we created goals as a district that we're going to push forward with a sense of intentionality. And I will tell you that once we're successful with these, no student will be hurt. I think that's important. There will be no student injured. There will be no family ruined. What's going to happen is that Pittsford will be a place where students and families feel as a safe haven to send their kids. So I want to share with you specifically our goals next, and then I will conclude my presentation. Say that again, Control L. Never heard of Control L. There we go. All right, so our first goal, all elementary teachers will implement classroom meetings 4 out of 6 days per cycle to create a welcoming and affirming environment. So if you don't know what that means, and I don't expect you to know what that means, and I don't even expect you to appreciate that unless you see it. So when you see what this looks like, it brings chills to you to see 5-year-old children sitting around on a mat or crisscross applesauce on different numbers and talking about their weekend, talking about their worries, and having classmates help them. Having classmates help them feel accepted. It's a time for the teachers to know the kids better as a trusted adult and vice versa. And it's a time for peers to connect with peers. Similarly, at the middle level, we will have, and you can see the timeline starting now and through June, and I can tell you it's already started, allowing students to have the opportunity to participate in monthly community circles. So I'll give you an example of what that looks like. Today we had circles for urban-suburban students around how they feel around not having transportation and how they feel as part of being part of Pittsford with this deficit. Pretty powerful. The third bullet, our high school buildings, ILT, our instructional leadership teams, will create a process to improve student voice. Instead of the adults having all of the voice, we want our students to have more voice. We will report at our board meetings and other areas around progress to what that looks like. Invite diverse voices multiple times throughout the year to engage in two-way dialogue, respectful, around topics that will contribute to the success and achievement of students. So in August, we had 2 forums around curriculum, and appreciate the people that attended that. That's something where the topics will change throughout the year, and that will be an ongoing process so that we can have an open forum where at board meetings you have public comment where you have 3 minutes, as you can see by the timer up there, where you express an opinion. Forums will allow you to express in dialogue. Gather and share accurate and complete information about our students and families, name, pronunciation, pronouns, home language. So one of the things that we use as a database is Infinite Campus, and we don't maximize that. So when a teacher gets a class list, for example, that teacher doesn't know the child's preferred name, preferred pronoun, etc. So that is something that our CIO is going to look at trying to build in to our system. Annually, our data team will generate reports to show measures of achievement, enrollment, discipline, attendance, and special education classified disaggregated by subgroups. Our HR department will establish connections with 10 colleges with teacher education programs that represent our diverse student population, with a goal of increasing our hiring and retention of diverse teachers. We will post on our district's website our value around a diverse workforce so that our community at large and beyond can see this as something that we value. We will explore options to make district communications accessible to staff in their preferred language, especially our custodians. A lot of our support staff are non-English speakers as their primary language, and being able to communicate with them in their language would be respectful. We will create a media campaign. I love this one, including a video montage showing who we are, and all the areas that we represent the diversity wheel. So I think it's important for the people that are here and the people that are watching and the people that aren't watching to see what our schools are really like. It was amazing, Amy and Ted, wouldn't you say, when we walked into the classrooms. When we walked into the classrooms, we saw a wealth of diversity in the classrooms, just by race alone. And then a lot of other places. We have the luxury of being able to talk to students that may not be like you, talk to their families that may not be like you, and understand the plight that they're on, and the troubles that they've gone through, the hardships, and you don't hear them. So we need to find a way to bring that to light about who is in our district, who are the students in our district, and share that with you. I skipped one that was professional development for all of our staff, to make sure that is ongoing. Common resources for our K-12 English Language Arts instruction, which represents the diversity within our student population and provides students opportunities to see both themselves and understand the perspective of others. Think about that. Understanding the perspective of others is something that I feel is a skill that has been lost in the last few years. Understanding the perspective of others, let that sink in. So it's not I'm coming here to you with my heels sunk in saying I'm right and you're wrong. This is me coming to the table saying let me engage in dialogue and let me understand where you're coming from. Similarly, updating the K-12 social studies curriculum to mirror the New York State Education Department's culturally responsive sustaining framework, making sure our SEL benchmarks are implemented in new curriculum, Examining the process for identifying students for AP classes across all subject areas in schools to identify specific barriers as to why some students or facets of students aren't attending. Evaluating and recommending any necessary changes to 4th through 6th grade math grouping practices. One of the things that's happened in our district is that we've kind of been locked into tracking at a really early age and finding ways to allow a sense of fluidity in our math program. Create and implement equity analysis protocols to ensure curricular and non-curricular learning experiences where all certified staff and administrators have shared transparency and accountability. So in other words, what is okay and not okay? How do I know I have and am doing the best thing for our students as it relates to equity and inclusion? Produce a culturally competent interview committee training video that will be shared with each interview committee member. And we have just completed that. So thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Sean, for that. And develop and launch a publicity campaign with information about how to request ASL interpreters for district meetings and how to access the district website in over 100 languages. So those are our goals over the next 1 to 2 to 3 years. You can see the timeline, the people that are responsible. My pledge is to come back to the board and report on these goals throughout the year and the progress that we're making. So with that, I am open to any questions. Most of you are here for this work, so.
Yeah, and I think that's why we don't have many questions, because we were in a 2-day workshop where so much of this work was so powerful, and it's been ongoing for a number of years. And I think to see it actually in writing, what the goals are and where we're headed, is just amazing. So I am very thankful to have been in the room with all of you and district leadership and parents. It was a wonderful 2-day workshop. So
Thank you.
I'm excited.
And Nancy, can we make sure that I'll send these to you tomorrow? You can post those to the website. Okay? Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Mike. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda, please? Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Ted. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Old business, anyone? New business? Public comment. So you'll see we have a new, very clear board above our heads that will be our timekeeper. I think a lot of the reason that we have this is for you to be able to see your time as well as us. And also listening to the alarm next to me was a little alarming for me. So I appreciate Ted researching this for us. We do have some protocols around public comment for those of you who have not been here before. The Pittsford Board of Education values transparency and the public comments made during its meetings. As such, the Pittsford Board of Education actively provides for this agenda item at our regular meetings. As Superintendent Pirro just said, the Board of Education meetings are not public forums. Rather, they're business meetings held in public where dialogue is not normally conducted. The purpose of this agenda item is for the board to receive respectful and constructive feedback, opinions, and information. These comments are then taken under the advisement by the Board of Education and the Superintendent of Schools. Respect and civility are required during these meetings, particularly as we have students routinely attending our meetings. And welcome to our students this evening. Comments should be in reference to an interest or topic, not an individual. Each speaker will have the floor for no more than 3 minutes. The board president reserves the right to limit the total amount of speaking time in an effort to avoid repetitiveness. If speakers are attending with other residents with similar input, we ask that the group designate one person to address the Board of Education. For speakers who do not follow meeting and decorum protocols, the speaker's privilege to use the floor will no longer be recognized by the Board of Education. Those planning to address the board should have filled out one of these white cards. And when you address us, if you could please announce your name and your address, we would appreciate that, and we'll start the clock once you address the board. And the first person we have tonight is Erica Cortez.
Hi, I'm yielding my time to Jane, sitting over here.
Hi, good evening.
Hi, Jane.
Hi.
And your address, please?
Elmwood Avenue. Mike, I would like to thank you for the segue into my presentation this evening. To take off of Mr. Piro's theme of a caring environment and understand perspective of others, I am presenting to you. We always teach our children to put themselves in others' shoes to understand how they feel. At first, our family thought we were alone in how we felt. As we have learned, there are many others. While there may be overlapping concerns, each family's situation is unique. I'm going to outline our family's experiences for a short time in the Pittsford public school system, so maybe you can understand our displeasure and our frustration with our interactions. Pittsford Central School District has been stressful and frustrating for us, and we are happy that it was short-lived. As a scientist for many years, I look at data and trends and draw conclusions. Perhaps many of the events we experienced are unrelated coincidences. Let me walk you through our timeline. My son started Pittsford in the 10th grade and was he not only not encouraged to take advanced courses, he was discouraged from pursuing advanced diplomas. He was determined anyways and pursued this path. I know we've been over this many times, but his exceptional third and fourth quarter grades were erased, and he was given the same grade as students, some of which were completely disruptive and disrespectful in his classes. This was infuriating and demotivating to him. I requested to meet with someone to review the policy, and the only way I was able to meet with a person was to go into the school and refuse to leave until somebody met with me. I was told this was the policy and we needed to think of all students. This was confusing to me, but I guess it connects with further things I was told. We have requested many times for details and never received specific answers other than that's the policy. I did receive the letter dated June 30th of this year that stated this has been explained to me many times, and no, it has not. It has just been told that's the policy. I contacted attorneys from Syracuse to Buffalo, and one attorney told me schools discuss the inequities and how students could have access. Many attorneys were hired by school districts. How much of taxpayers' money has been spent by school districts on attorneys? Sorry about that. And to further go into your comment, I was bothered by, to date, we have still never been able to have a meaningful conversation. I would like to continue with my time if that would be possible. Summer 2020.
Technically, Jane, I just want to clarify, it's not technically your time. You're taking someone else, and I didn't even get an address from this individual.
Erica? Well, she yielded her time to me, and I would like the chance to continue
Okay,
because
you may.
over all this time I've not been able to present.
You may.
Summer 2020, as we watched our country burn and be destroyed, a Pittsford School District official posed with BLM and sent an email to parents. When we requested was the same going to be done with any of the organizations supporting police, so our youths are getting an unbiased message, we never received a response. Late 2020, our son was scheduled to take 3 dual enrollment courses in the 2020-2021 school year. My son did not want to risk being stripped of his grades again, so we enrolled him directly with a college. We were struggling to find out what his schedule was going to be for the 2020-2021 school year so we could do his college coursework. After over a week of unanswered calls, I had to go to the school in person and again refused to leave so somebody would meet with me. I was told if we needed to know his schedule to enroll for the college classes, we should homeschool. Our family found the attendance system for the hybrid days for the 2020-2021 school year frustrating and inconvenience, as many times my son was working on his college class and would forget to push the button on his cell phone and was marked absent. This happened numerous times. When the U.S. history started, we asked for a curriculum and was told there wasn't one. We just wanted to be aware of what was going to be submitted. We were concerned in his U.S. history why my son was given materials from the known communist Howard Zinn. Why were these materials collected back from the students and not sent home like the other materials? I brought information on Howard Zinn to be scanned into the meeting minutes, so maybe people that are not aware of him can know a little bit about him. I was also upset with myself for not knowing about cancel culture until the summer of 2020. I had no idea where this came from. As a parent, I was not pleased with my son being introduced to cancel culture, and discussions on canceling Columbus Day, which is also a goal of the Zinn Education Project. As the fall semester progressed, due to the stress of our interactions with the Pittsford Central School District and the significant amount of time, we transitioned back to homeschooling.
Okay, Jane, that's it.
Thank you.
Time is up. Scott Georger. Thank you.
I'm Scott Georger. I live at 70 Woodland Road. I'd like to take the opportunity to address the board again, and I thank you very much for this opportunity. Based on my perspective, I'm seeing a tough time with high school kids and high school parents making the transition back to school from last year. From my standpoint, last year was limited. It was limited in learning. There was no school on Friday. There was no homework. There was no socialization. Were there any deaths or long-term problems to students, teachers, and staff? And if there were, was this any different from another flu year? Excuse me. Yes, COVID-19 is bad for some, so let's protect those. But it's not a problem for children. The problem for children is limited school, limited learning, no school on Friday, no homework, no socialization, and lower standards of education. In the superintendent's report, he said that we are heading in the right direction, and I thank you for that, and please continue. Please don't do this again. You are destroying, and we are destroying, a generation. Did the actions taken last year and the year before that do anything to stop the spread of COVID? Thank you.
Scott, can I ask you to just come back up for a second? I'm not going to disagree with anything that you said. I agree. Last year was not a year that we want for our students, and we never want to repeat that again.
Thank you.
So I want to thank you for that comment, and I want to thank you for your decorum as well. And I think this is an opportunity too to also share that we are pressed in a big way to keep school open this year. And I want to make sure that you understand too that last year's hybrid model was not a Pittsford Central School District decision. It was us having to follow a state law. And I think that's I'm hoping that you understand that, at least, to say that we know that we want our students back. And we want our students healthy, and everything that you said. We want to protect those that are here and elsewhere, but last year the parameters were such that we were not allowed to do that.
But then why were there other districts that were open?
So that's a really good question, and I appreciate that question. The vast majority of the districts that were open were rural districts that had a lot of space where they can keep kids 6 feet apart.
And what about here in Rochester?
We weren't able to do that.
There were schools that were open in Rochester, though, correct?
Which schools?
Aquinas.
In Monroe County?
In Monroe County?
Yeah, so
Space.
And
so it was
Harley?
Yeah, those are space as well. And I don't want to necessarily go back and forth around that, but my biggest point was I want you to know that I appreciate what you said. And if there was a way for us to say we're not going to pay attention to these laws, we're going to have kids full on, but we didn't have that option.
I understand what you're saying. However, I'm not sure that that's what the law specifically said as I read it and I understood it.
Yeah.
But thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for your comments
Scott.
tonight.
And finally, we have Lillian O'Donnell.
Hi.
Hi, welcome.
So I'm Lillian O'Donnell. My address is 473 East Street. Okay. So, hello. My name is Lillian O'Donnell, and I'm a senior at Pittsford Mendon High School. Today I'm here to speak to you on behalf of the student body of both Mendon and Sutherland in regards to upperclassmen free periods in a policy in a COVID world. I know we spoke about this a little earlier, but school has changed quite a lot in the past year in unprecedented ways we've never experienced before. When a health crisis such as the one we're currently facing hits, it is clear our first priority is to maintain and ensure the health and safety of students, staff, and our community, and I applaud the Pittsford School District for doing well. I was a sophomore when school first shut down due to COVID. I'm now a senior, turning 18 and heading off to college soon. Feels like a blink of an eye. For almost a year, we, understandably so, have been stuck inside. And returning back to normal is a concept that seems so near, yet so far. And to be frank, being a kid throughout this has sucked. No big games, no prom, no standard, consistent education that we've become somewhat accustomed to. As we return now for our final year, things are beginning to look up. Seeing everyone every day is a huge privilege we've all taken for granted. But we can't help but notice some questionable inconsistencies in our return. Currently, upperclassmen are eligible to obtain lunch dismissal, allowing us to leave the building during our lunch periods. Yet we are still mandated to attend stationary study hall periods that in the past have been reserved primarily for underclassmen. We understand the importance of contact tracing, making sign-out sheets and such necessary within school walls. But what continues to puzzle us is why we are trusted to leave the building during our designated lunch periods, but not our study halls. Allowing us to leave the building in the same manner as lunch dismissals will decrease the density of student population within the building at a time, allowing for increased social distancing. In addition, this policy effectively limits any student participating from spreading or catching illnesses within the building during the time that they are out. It can feel almost foolish leaving the building for 30 minutes only to rush back for 2 study halls. This was an issue that not only I noticed, but as chatter began and continued, I began taking notes of people's experiences and shared support for the topic. 2 days ago, I started a petition containing the names of over 150 students from all classes, Mendon, Sutherland, all ages, and even the support of some teachers and alumni. This is an issue that we truly believe in as a community. I'm aware that reopening campus is no simple task, and I look forward to hearing your thoughts and concerns, and I hope that we're able to together create a solution that has the best outcome for students. Thank you.
Wow, that was perfect timing. Nicely done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lillian. Thank you for sharing with us.
So Lillian, I would say that if you wanted to email me next Friday, I will give you the exact date when we'll reopen. It'll be very soon.
All right. Thank
Okay?
you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming, taking time tonight. And with that, we will close public comment session. May I have a motion to adjourn, please? Sarah and Robin? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.